Hi there. So it's been a while since I did a video. It's felt like, sometimes I feel like the universe gives you like a red or a green light as to when it's time to share externally and when it's time to go more inward with things. I feel like almost like, literally like a flame that like goes externally with stuff and then retreats in a little to, I guess, gather more fuel. Or what I feel like has been happening over the last few months has been a lot of like internal processing to then be able to offer and share more value rather than just continuing to speak and there not being like true substance to it. So what I wanted to talk about today is codependency and the mother wound and how that plays out in the twin flame dynamic, or your, if you don't want to call it that, your like journey back to self, or your process healing the self. If there's like unhealed trauma between you and your mother, that then gets passed down when you then have children. You pass that down in the DNA, or pass that down the bloodline, and then that ends up getting, that dynamic ends up getting played out with your family. This is why it's so important to heal yourself and heal any trauma that you're carrying inside before you have children, or at least become conscious of it so that you can then make different choices when you notice that trauma coming up. Codependency can be really dangerous when it comes to having a family, if you've not really healed that, because you then teach your children essentially how to be codependent, because that's how you are, and that's what I experienced growing up. I grew up with a severely codependent mother, and that might be a little triggering to people to hear, or even to her to hear, and I don't mean it in an attacking way. It's just something that I've become aware of, and how that has played a part in me feeling quite disconnected to my divine self. I've almost felt like I've been trying to be someone else, rather than, like, not all the time, but sometimes trying to like be someone else, because that's what I was programmed with, how to be codependent, and that's never felt like my truth, which it isn't. It's none of our truth. This is trauma, and this is programming that we've learned, or we've gathered growing up. It's not who we really are. And also, and particularly in a sort of twin flame dynamic, you are attracting your other half, so to speak, and you'll both be polarities to each other. So often, from my understanding and my experience so far, I don't have children yet, but I believe that the child that you'll have together is like the third energy between you, and they are there to help balance you two as polarities of each other. And if you are teaching that child codependency, you're polarizing them out of balance so that they can no longer be the balance point between you and your twin, or you and your husband or wife. And that's when that then causes problems with that relationship, because you can't stay separate from each other. You'll just keep trying to like merge together without that that balance point there in between. And yeah, like I found that really difficult growing up, because as what I believe to be a child of twin flame parents, I was born awake, and I was like super high vibrational when I came to the earth, or when I was born. And almost with this trauma and what was happening round about me, that I wasn't able to clear it properly. So it was then kind of getting stuck in me because of what they were teaching me in the process of how to be, rather than just allowing me to be my divine self and do what I was there to do. And that comes from just unconsciousness as well, like not knowing. And you don't know what you don't know. This is, I mean, twin flames aren't a new concept, but at the same time, there's a lot more consciousness, I believe, around it now than what there would have been at one point. So I also actually think this is why there's other reasons for separation with twins, but I think this is part of the reason, because you don't have to, but you kind of have to have a child quite quickly when you get together. So, or that will happen like naturally quite quickly when you come together. So you got to be ready for that. And it's like the only way that you can really function together as a couple, to have that that stability, I guess, in between you, like the balance point. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Yeah, and I also feel like, I'm not sure what happened first, but I remember the aspect of my dad being rejected in me by my mum, and to a certain extent her side of the family, but my mum in particular. And I feel like she took out a lot of unprocessed anger and resentment that she felt towards my dad on me. Like it was like misdirected towards me, or towards that aspect that she saw like him in me, which then was quite emotionally traumatic growing up, to be honest, and quite difficult to deal with, because when it's, I mean, your mother and father are part of you, so it's not fair to inflict on a child not to be like their father. Like, it's almost impossible to do that. But I think in some ways I sort of learned how to do it, because I didn't feel like I could survive in that environment if I didn't get my dad out of me. But that's then, as well as programming that was passed down from my mum's experience growing up, like with her mum, rejecting that aspect of me also made me somewhat codependent on her and threw me out of balance. So I've always, and I also feel like that was almost the dark side of her's intention, to do that, to make me never leave her. Because when people have really low self-esteem, they and they need someone to love them, or they need someone to need them, it seems like a great idea to do that to your child at the time. However, I've never been able to have a really fulfilling, nurturing, what I see as normal mother-daughter relationship because of that. Because, like, by me being out of balance, I can't be of the same amount of service to her as I could have been, or like be able to I don't even know what the word is, but be able to be like detached from her and be able to meet each other on an equal level. Like, it's never felt equal, and it's almost like, I feel like we had this communication once. I was like, you don't see me as your equal, and she said, well, you're not. And I'm like, this is also what happens with twin flames, that balance point energy. It's the other half of you that you're birthing in the child. So like the other aspect of you and the other aspect of him is going to be birthed in that child. So it's really important for you to learn how to love yourself first, especially if you're in a twin flame connection, before you have children, because otherwise you're gonna play out all that drama of where you don't love yourself on that child, whilst you're being the aspect that you can accept of yourself. And I realise this might be quite difficult to hear for my family, and also for other people, other mothers and that have maybe were unaware of this but now can start to see it from what I've said. But there's actually a lot of repressed anger and resentment and like sadness for not being able to be who I am, I guess, that's been stored in my body that has to come out now, and it's just got to be said. And also I want to be a voice for those other people who have felt like they've had the same experience and either haven't reached a point where they feel that they're able to speak about this, or they're somewhat unaware of what's going on. I want to be the voice so that they can start to identify and start to process through that unprocessed emotion that they're still holding on to. Because I feel like you've got to have some level of consciousness of it in order to be able to heal it. So yeah, so thank you for listening, and I'll be back soon with another video.